And now, part two of my conversation with Derek Gaskins, Chief Marketing Officer of Yesway. As a convenience store, um, largely a convenience store retailer, what impact does Amazon have on your business? I mean, is Amazon, I mean, they're not in the convenience business, but frankly, with 1 and 2 hour delivery, they get more and more convenient all the time.
Yes.
So, to what extent do they factor into your your strategies going forward?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm one of those people who feel that if you're a retailer, that Amazon factors into your business, period. And I don't care what kind of retail that you're in, much like their name implies, they want to be able to sell you everything that would be in the Amazon forest. So from that aspect, it factors in. They are and have been a big winner. We are partnered with them though, as an industry, either through the Amazon Web Services. I know some retailers host their data with them. We don't. We don't do our loyalty programs with them. I know other retailers, they have Amazon lockers. And then I also know that they're looking at white labeling some of their technology for their shop scan and go or their walk in and out technology. So longer term, I think that is something that is of interest. But I definitely keep an eye on them as a merchant, and looking at the moves and the strides that they take, because they tend to take a very long-term view of the consumer. They are driven by growing market share. And I think that's a savvy way to go about retailing in general. And I would say that convenience retail in particular, what I've seen is that some of the trends that have turned around to benefit us, I'm looking at how is Amazon sourcing so that I can source some of these things. And if it's working at, with the Alibabas or the Amazons of the world as an alternative to my mainline wholesaler, again, going back to that being more flexible and more agile, I have to get supply. And so if they become a partner in some of that, then that can serve us well. I think lockers is an interesting thing for us, right? We're in these rural markets where that last mile, I can be a partner with Amazon to help them solve the last mile and drive more traffic to my stores. And while it's a convenience store in name, it's more of a destination now, because now you're coming to me for other services and I'm hoping to capture some of your wallet.
Do you have Amazon lockers in your stores? Any of
We
your?
do, we do. And so we are also rolling out more of them. And, they have, it went from something that was, novel and okay, yeah, you could drive some traffic to something that I'm interested in because of COVID now. And I think knowing that, back to your first point, we're in the acceleration age, that even in those rural markets, to your point, when people couldn't get toilet paper, they said, well, let me finally place my first order on Amazon, or let me go online and do it. And if the, post route wasn't going to their homes, then they're coming to a locker that's in my store to pick those products up.
Well, it's interesting because they do set, even I would imagine, in some ways for you, they do sort of benchmark where people need to be. I mean, they're, you've got loyalty marketing. Well, they've got Prime, which is, I always thought that's the world's best loyalty marketing program.
That's the loyalty program,
I,
right?
you've got private label. Well, they've got great private label programs, and clearly that's something they've invested in. And it seems to me that going forward, I mean, could you see yourselves having an Amazon Go style store? I mean, I
Yeah,
don't mean that technology specifically, but is that in the
similar.
back of your
Yes,
mind? We're going to have to get there eventually because they're going to just set expectations.
I agree. I mean, I certainly think that technology is skewed much more towards urban, dense markets.
Right.
So, that could be one of the things that has suffered because of COVID, right? With the lack of concentration in downtown DC and Chicago and Seattle, where they have those stores. But I've visited those stores, and, I went in as a skeptic, and as a naysayer. I think when you test the technology, at first I thought, okay, they're solving for a problem that's not a problem, that it's not hard to pull out your wallet and pay until you go do it. And then you say, okay, wow, this is a
Yeah,
game changer.
right. Oh, for the first, and I've been, I think, in almost every one of their go stores around the country. And I mean, that was my first reaction when I went into the very first one in Seattle. Was like, every time I'm on a line now, I go, well, this is stupid.
This is stupid. Right now, lines seem so like 1800s.
Yeah, absolutely. What about doing things? I mean, if you're going to have frequent shopper data, how about doing things like subscriptions? Like they have Subscribe and Save, which has been an enormous
Yes.
power for them in terms of growing their business. And it seems to me that, especially in those markets where you're the one or two retailers, subscriptions could also serve as a real engine for you in terms of growth.
Totally agree with you. And I think that while Yesway and all subs, we've looked at the subscription in some of our core business drivers, namely car wash and dispensed beverages. You'll see a retailer like Sheetz or others in the Northeast or on the East Coast that have actually launched subscription-based programs within coffee. Panera copied it, right? I mean, I think it's smart if you need the trips. So I think for us, it's a question of making sure you have the right economic balance, because dispensed beverages tend to be a really high margin area. So that means that you can play around with it, that you can invest some of that margin to say, if I give the consumer more, will it make them more loyal? Will I increase trip frequency? Will I grow their basket size? I think that's loyalty 101. That's the very definition of it. So a subscription in and around commonly used high frequency type of offerings, much like Prime, makes sense. So if I know, hey, I want you to come to me 6 days a week for your coffee and you only come 3 days, then a subscription model can help me get you there. Same thing for car wash. Those have been the services and the offerings where I've seen it within the channel work the best.
So let me ask you, finish up by asking you what I think right now is the $10,000 or $10 million question, which has to do with DoorDash's recent announcement that they were going to create DashMart, which is basically their own convenience store. And remarkably, they are creating DashMart right after they basically went into business with a bunch of convenience stores. They had expanded outside their traditional channels of trade. They partnered with a bunch of convenience store chains, and then I think in fairly quick order decided we're going to create our own version of this in markets either they're serving with partners and probably in markets that they're not. To me, the convenience store partners that they have are now facing an existential threat to their businesses. They've partnered with a competitor who has access to their sales data, and they have access to their delivery data. Am I wrong in my perception of that? That this is, I mean, to me, it's what Instacart is going to do, but has been sort of doing it below the radar. DoorDash just went out and did it, I think. Do you see it the same way?
Absolutely. You are accurate. It is something that I actually challenged my team with, that, as we were in conversations to be potentially one of the convenience store partners with DoorDash, that was something that I was leery of, is they will actually have better data on our customers than we do. You could make that case. And do you want to see that to them, knowing that long term, that their goal is to put you out of business? That it's one thing if they wanted to partner with you and operate dark stores under my name in markets that we operate or dominate in. It's a totally different thing if it's, DashMart under their name, and they now understand what products are most commonly sought, are wanting to be, purchased, can align themselves with the same set of suppliers that we work with, and can set up these, regional hubs or wholesale operations in dark stores, and then serve the population better than we can.
So and potentially get better deals from manufacturers, because they could potentially be bigger. Because they could have a lot of these things up around the country.
And I mean, that is the opportunity as well as the weakness of the convenience channel, right? Everyone reads the headline of 7-Eleven just pays $21 billion to buy Speedway. That still doesn't even give them 10% market share of all the convenience stores in just the US. highly fragmented. So you start getting Dash Mart that could get that type of density. Exactly to your point, they would have scale, better deals, and could bring, call it Walmart buying power to the channel. Could be pretty disruptive.
Well, and the thing I just don't understand about it is that retailers, and this is the Instacart model as well as the DashMart model, I don't understand why retailers would ever do anything that would diminish their own brand, right? It seems to me that you've got these great brands, you've got Allsups, you've got Yesway. These are brands that you've got to build. That's your job.
Exactly.
And why you would want to ally yourself with someone who doesn't have your brand as their number one priority, to me is just crazy.
It seriously is, but I also think that, people see innovation differently. And so some look at it and say, hey, this can enhance my brand and make me seem that I'm on the leading edge or cutting edge. But I take a worldview much like you. The fee structure is something else that we all joke about. And I'm sure you've seen the memes that go around where someone orders, $5 worth of food, but by the time that the delivery fee, the service fee, the dash fee, the this fee, the that fee, it's a $20 transaction. Well, as a brand, I look at that and say, is the person going to be angry and think I overcharged them for something that they would otherwise get? Now, granted, the younger generation tends to take a more open view of that because, whether it's Uber.
They're spending their parents' money.
They're spending their parents' money. That's dead on. That's right. But that's something that we have to be mindful of, and when I talked about the role that value retail plays coming out of the pandemic, it's serious. And so, yes, we are a convenience store. And I've always said that there's a fine line between insult pricing and convenience pricing, that people get a slight premium. They don't get insults, or they don't get when they feel that they're being gouged. So if they're saying a gallon of milk is a gallon of milk, and if I can buy it from Walmart or Giant Eagle or Stu Leonard's or whatever retailer within this range, and you charge me double, you have now insulted my intelligence. Your supply chain cannot be that inefficient that it costs me that. And so I look at this space through that same lens, that if the cost for me to solve for the last mile and to either do curbside or deliver it to you is so unwieldy that I'm tacking on fees that cause it to be insult and no longer a value, then you have to question it.
Well, and I'm a little more cynical than you are, because you said that one of the reasons people do it is they do see it as building their value proposition. I actually think that more than that, they do it because they're going to get a check and they're not going to have to make the investment necessary to do it on their own.
That's a good point.
But in your business or your industry, your segment, I mean, is it possible to have maybe the right word isn't proprietary, but does it require a greater investment in these kinds of services so you can kind of preserve your brand as opposed to the other way to go at it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a classic marketer, right? So much like you, when I look at it, I think you can invest in your brand and figure out what is the compelling aspects that make it sticky or create that destination. That just because you're a convenience store doesn't mean you're not a destination for something core that a segment of the population wants. So for us, food service has done that. Allsups has a burrito program that's called world famous Allsups burritos. And it's, for people who grew up in that region, it's craveable and they demand it. They go out of their way for it. On the East Coast, I would say Wawa with the hoagies and coffee feels the same way. So from that aspect, we feel that warrants us investing in the brand. Private label, I call it own brands, as most merchants do, for that reason. It's not about just white label or cheap or value. That's a piece of it, but it's own brands. And so some of the things that we have are unique to Yesway or unique to Allsups. People will say Allsups milk tastes different, has higher butter fat, and, you know, swear by it. And the dairy that we get it from and that we've worked with for 60 plus years, you know, there's a lot of pride in that. And so people in West Texas and New Mexico, when they move away, they're saying, ship it to me. The milk I'm drinking in, you know, Jersey is nowhere near as good, and some of those kinds of things. So that's when you know that your brand has created something that, to your point, is compelling, that people will go out of their way to seek out. But I think in the markets where we operate, we want to make sure that through the service, the experiences in the stores, you know, not going quite as far as a Stu would go with his concepts, but, you know, we want friendly, helpful service. We want not just clean stores, that's table stakes, but in the post-COVID world, they have to be clean because people are thinking that if it's not, it's lethal. So those kinds of things, they have become tenets for us as a brand, and things that I'm fiercely passionate about to drive more engagement.
So it's funny you talk about milk, because my kids growing up, they would only drink milk from Stu Leonard's.
Stu Leonard's milk.
Now, I don't know if that's perception or if it's reality, but guess what? Doesn't really matter.
There you go.
Right? Either way, they were getting the message. So last question. You've been very patient with me, and I appreciate all your time. I've been arguing since basically February that companies needed to come out of the pandemic different than they went in. That they needed to be kind of saying, okay, that we are going to be living in a different reality. I don't call it new normal, but it is. I do think it'll be a new reality.
Yes.
Everybody's reality is a little different. So how will Yesway be a different company coming out of the pandemic, whenever that's going to be? How will you be different?
I think there'll be three ways that we're fundamentally different, right? So the first is being more flexible and agile, which I shared. So that has been something that is now part of our DNA. Prior to the pandemic, flexibility actually wasn't necessarily a good thing. It's like you talked about a 7-Eleven in 3 different regions of the nation. You took pride in it being the exact same. Now, I want diversity in my supplier network, my supplier base. So if company A runs out, I can source similar product from company B. So that's a huge difference for us. I think the second big game changer has been more focus on simplicity. You know, you've heard me a couple of times say simplify and amplify. So that has been a guarding mantra of mine, and I instill that into my team. But I do think coming out of the pandemic, Allsups is one of the things that we were very fortunate in, is that they were relentless in their focus on simplicity. And I think coming out, I now realize how wise that is, or was and is. Because when you do fewer things better, they resonate. And it also means, back to my first point, you don't have to be as flexible on as many fronts. Now I can be flexible where it is valued by the consumer. The third and most important thing coming out of the pandemic has been people. And, you know, I've talked about the classic 4 Ps of marketing, right? Everyone talks price and product and place and promotion. And I now say there's 6 Ps, that process and people being the main P have been a focus. And so for us, whether it's been the hero pay or recognizing that we are essential retail and our workers in grocery and convenience stores on the front line have literally been risking their lives. We have not closed a store yet, knock on wood, and we have been able to manage and thrive through the pandemic. I think that has elevated, and all companies will tell you, oh, we're a people first culture, we're this, we're that. Hooey. It's not true. you know the ones that genuinely are.
No, there's the ones that walk the walk, and then there's ones that just talk the talk. I'm with you.
And so that's what I'm saying, is recognizing that you got to walk that talk, and you have to pay higher livable wages. And it's not a political thing. It's a human right people thing, and seeing the role that they're playing in shaping what the company is. And then I think that people focus, of course, ultimately goes then to the consumer. And if you're truly a people-centric company, culture, and org, and putting people first and making decisions through that lens, I think COVID is going to force companies to walk that talk and not just talk it. Because in the early days, you know, I could think back to, we were at NACS Day on the Hill as an industry talking about, we don't want a federal mandate for what the wages should be. We don't even think about that now. It was, if I have to pay $2, $3 more per hour to get, you know, quality workforce in the stores, done, go do it. It's the right thing to do. And also just PPE and sanitation and making sure they have the tools that they need while working. All of those things have become not just hot button topics, but have been strategies, have been game changers for how we operate as an org. And I see it in our weekly meetings that from the, you know, from our C-suite on down, it's always saying, what can we do to satisfy the folks in the stores? And I know I don't take it lightly. You know, I'm talking to you via Zoom right now. I have the comfort of being able to work from home. As soon as the restrictions on travel loosened, I made sure I was in the stores. And, you know, people are always asking, well, why are you traveling? Well, I'm no better than my frontline team members that are making the Yesway brand go. So I'm doing so safely, and I'm doing so, you know, I may have to self-quarantine when I come home and do those types of things, but it's getting out there with the people, making sure that they understand and they see me and they see the leadership and they understand that we're a retail business, that, you know, we aren't, you know, the old parable of there are no registers in the corporate office. It's true. You know, I haven't even been in my corporate office in months, but the stores have been thriving and have been going on. And I think that people focus is the biggest thing to come out.
Well, Derek, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. This has been fascinating to learn, frankly, about a company that I didn't know that much about beforehand. I wish you luck. I hope you stay safe and stay healthy. These are challenging and extraordinary times, but the good news is I think the extraordinary companies are the ones that are going to come through with flying colors. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It has been a great time just talking to you. You know, I've read you for almost 20 plus years now. So keep up the great work and all the writing, and keep the content coming.
You've been reading me that long, and we both look exactly probably the same as we did when we started, right? So
yes.
Anyway, thanks so much. I appreciate it.